Welcome to St. Peter Mancroft for our weekly reflection, whether you're watching online or you're here in church. If you are here in church, please feel free to continue with your visit. I'm Catherine Waddams, a lay minister here, and today I want to talk about demonstrations. There was a lovely organ recital here at St. Peter Mancroft last Saturday, one of our regular summer Saturday lunchtime concerts, ending with a splendid Bach prelude and fugue. Between pieces, we could hear some noise from the demonstrations on Gentleman's Walk, and there had been some concerns about whether these would disrupt the church and its activities. But the organ drowned out the shouting during the recital itself, and there was no trouble. In some ways, it seemed a good metaphor for overcoming the aggressive calls from both sides. One person was wearing a T-shirt saying, "Love music, hate racism." His socialist worker placard urged us to smash fascism and racism by any means necessary. I'd gone to join the anti-fascist group, to add my presence to voices and placards expressing welcome to refugees and asylum seekers. It was good to see that numbers on this side easily outnumbered those on the protest organised by Students Against Tyranny. The EDP estimated the score at several hundred to about 30. I wasn't entirely clear what the smaller protest was about. The main banner was about keeping female spaces female, but there was quite a lot of noise, and the two groups shouted at each other across a line of police who separated them. Of course, it's good that there was no violence or damage, as there has been elsewhere in the country. And I felt so glad to have the opportunity to stand up for tolerance and welcome. Some of the racial abuse and threatening behaviour, let alone violence, has been truly shocking, and I'm ashamed that it has been heard in my country. But I wasn't entirely convinced that shouting back is really the answer. We've recently become a church of sanctuary, part of a network of local schools, charities supporting refugees and asylum seekers, universities, faith centres, and other organisations. Norwich City of Sanctuary is part of a national movement building a culture of welcome for people seeking sanctuary, many of whom have lost their homes, fled persecution, and are seeking safety here. As its website says, Norwich has a long history of being a place of sanctuary to those seeking it. We want to celebrate the contribution refugees make and to continue to extend a hand of welcome to those who are arriving today. But we've also been reminded recently of our shameful part in stoking anti-Semitism in the past, through the story of William of Norwich, whose death all those centuries ago in 1144 was attributed to the local Jewish community, an early case of fake news and used to justify persecution of Jewish people, both locally and elsewhere. Recent violence has echoes of that scapegoating and threats. It is truly shocking to realize how threatened some people of colour and of particular faiths are feeling. The government has acted decisively and quickly through the courts to make clear that harsh and swift punishment will reward acts of violence, especially when these are aimed at intimidating and threatening people. This must have played some part in some of the expected right-wing marches, including one in Norwich last week, which didn't materialise. But are such punitive measures really the long-term answer? Some of the violence does seem to have been truly mindless, in the sense that participants haven't been able to articulate why they are involved. Hooliganism has been associated with football in this country in the past, and there's clearly a strong element of social media now stoking misinformation and inciting riots. But perhaps the unrest reflects a deeper unhappiness. While Elon Musk's suggestion of imminent civil war seems outrageous, it is worrying that turnout in elections continues to fall. The new government has a large parliamentary majority, but it results from only 1/3 of voters positively choosing the Labour Party. And because only 3/5 of people who are registered to vote actually turned out on the day, that means that 2/5 didn't vote at all, and 2/3 of those who did voted for other parties. I don't know how you are on fractions, but if you do the maths, it means that only 1/5 of registered voters actually voted for Labour. That does not mean, by the way, that 4/5 voted against, as one misleading headline claimed. But do that other 4/5 feel they have a stake in a government that they didn't actively support? Voting seems irrelevant to many people. If they feel that our democracy is failing them, they may use other means to make their views heard. Should we listen to them, especially if what they say is inflammatory and threatening? Here, I think we need to distinguish between the underlying message, perhaps a very general feeling of dissatisfaction and being left behind, one of the factors in the Brexit vote, and how that message is said. Once the sentences have been handed down to deter riots and intimidation, how can we take seriously what has fueled this behaviour? In our own welcome to refugees, to people seeking asylum, are we considering enough how other people may feel how this affects them? We should at least be honest about the difficulties which open borders might seem to present to people who are suffering from the way our economy is or isn't working for them at the moment. People on restricted benefits, on housing waiting lists, who need to use food banks. We need to fix the inequities which make life so difficult for so many people. And this is likely to mean some sacrifice by those of us who haven't suffered much in the current climate. Why are there such inequities within our system, with ordinary workers paid so much less than their bosses? We should find the facts and be honest about the positive contribution of immigrants to our health and care services, to our universities, to their local economies like Norwich. And also explore honestly whether population increases do put pressure on house and rental prices, on school places and health waiting lists in some places. This might be more effective than shouting back, or even letting lovely music drown the hate speech. I don't know if any of you remember Tom Lehrer, an American mathematician, songwriter, and comedian who was popular in the 1950s and 60s, so that ages me and perhaps you if you remember him. He had a song about National Brotherhood Week, a few days when we are all invited to love our fellow human beings. As he wryly commented in introducing his song on the topic, he has discovered that there are people who don't love their fellow humans, and he hates people like that. Christians are called to love their fellow humans and all creation every week of the year, whatever their views. And one way of loving people is to listen to them. Are we prepared to stop drowning out people we disagree with, come out of our own bubbles, and try to hear what they are really feeling and saying, and then to do something about it, even if it costs us? And where can we start? Lots of questions. I'm sure some useful answers and discussion. Thank you for listening.